In today's video, I'm reacting to your sewing tips. Yes, a little while ago, I asked for you to submit your sewing tips on my community page, and you definitely came forward. So we're going to go over those tips and share them with everyone. So as I said in the intro, I have been giving you lots of tips, and to be honest, I might be running out of tips. No, not really. I'm never going to run out of tips. But I thought it would be a really great opportunity to let you guys have your say in what you think are your favourite tips. We've all got lots of experience to share, whether we've been sewing for 6 months or 60 years, haven't we? If we haven't got the experience ourselves, then perhaps our family members, maybe our mothers, grandmothers and fathers and grandfathers, they've passed on information to us as well. So I asked you on the community tab, and if you don't watch my community tab, do keep an eye on it because I do post quite a lot over there. So the first tip comes from Susan, Northern Georgia, and I haven't pre-read these. Actually, I did when they were written months ago, 1 month ago, and I haven't read them since, so with my brain fog, I've completely forgotten. So Susan, Northern Georgia says, I learned this years ago from the quilting community that is to stabilise your fabric with starch spray before cutting. Yes, 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 I cannot say yes enough times to starching your fabrics. This is particularly helpful if you've got a lightweight or difficult to use fabric. Particularly as a beginner, you might find it very difficult to work with lightweight fabrics such as viscose or rayon, maybe chiffon or georgette. You might have trouble with those types of fabrics, and I can tell you starching your fabrics is going to save your bacon. Here's mine, and it's just what you use for ironing. My nan used to use this years and years ago to starch my granddad's collars and his old shirt, I guess. But this is great. So if you've got like a fabric such as a chiffon that is very, very floaty, it's difficult to hold in your hands, even to get pins in sometimes. So I recommended this in a video. I'm not 100% sure which one. It's probably the one about buying fabrics online. Yeah, because I'll explain what fabrics are. So, starch spray. If you don't own some starch spray, get some, and this will save your bacon. Where you're struggling to manage the fabric, this is going to be your best friend. You just spray it on, leave it for a minute, and then once you've completed the garment, you'll wash it out and it'll be like it was never there in the first place. So the next tip comes from Jade Elise. Hi Jade. Break your projects into small, manageable steps and work at it a little each day. Yeah, I discussed this in my chronic health video. If you haven't caught that video yet, do check it out because it's got lots of tips that, although it is aimed at people with chronic health or disabilities, anyone, if you get tired after doing some tasks, then there's got some great tips in there, and this is one of the tips. And for me, with chronic health, with ME, I absolutely have to do this in small chunks. I would never ever be able to get through a whole pattern in one afternoon. Like back in the day when I was very first doing it, it might have taken 6 hours, but I would have got a whole dress done in a day, and that just would never happen now. When I first started struggling with doing that, I felt a bit of a failure actually, because I was seeing everyone online was making multiple garments, sometimes 2, 3 garments in a day. But once I changed my mindset and decided that if I just do a little bit today, that's going to be really, really helpful, because that's tomorrow, that bit's going to be done and I can get on to the next bit. And I can either sit there and think badly because I can't complete a garment in a day and get nothing done, or take a week or 2 weeks or however long I need and do a little bit each day, and at the end have that garment that I need. So Lisa Jennings, hi Elisa. She says make a basic bodice and pants trousers block so that you can see on the flat design where the commercial pattern will go wrong for you before even making a muslin. Yeah, I haven't made my own blocks. When I was very first sewing, I did attempt to make a bodice block and I couldn't get it right. I had a really long centre front and a really short centre back, and I was very new to sewing and I didn't understand anything, so I gave up. It is something I've always wanted to go back to, and actually after this mini series finishes, the one I'm doing, thanks, I made that, where I'm taking you from picking your sewing machine through to a finished garment. Once that is eventually finished, and I foresee that going on for months and months, maybe even to halfway through next year, but once that is finished, I am going to be doing a series on your own bodice blocks, so look out for that in the future. I personally can't talk to the benefit of having a bodice block and using it for those purposes, but I have heard a lot of people do that and have a lot of success with it. So although I can't recommend it myself, I'm very interested and I am going to be making my own at some point. The next comment is from Stephanie Cruz. I found a cool trick from another sewist to use dental floss to gather. Yes, so this is a really good tip. There are lots of ways to gather. It's not the way that I gather, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but it certainly is a way you can gather, and it is a way I've gathered in the past with a lot of success. What she's talking about is if you get your dental floss and then zigzag over it, and then you can gather it up because there's no actual stitching on the floss, it's just over it, and then you can pull it to the gathers that you need, sew your gathers together, then you can pull the dental floss out. It's a really good idea. You can do it with yarn or string as well. Anything that's long and stable, you can do it with. The next sewing tip is from Susan Corvaland. Sorry if I'm butchering anyone's names, I do apologise. Careful selection of yardage with considering weight, drape, fibre content is smart and a money-saving advice. Making a toile before trying a new pattern is very wise too. Thanks for your comment, Susan, and I agree with all of it. You know, on this channel I've been talking about toiles for some time and how much I think we all need to be doing them. That's smart and it's money saving, as you said. So considering the weight, the drape and the fibre content of your yardage is so important. Now, I did talk about that in my video about choosing fabrics online because it really does affect things. I know I've made garments in the wrong fabric. Back in the day when I was first sewing, I would use cotton, like quilting cotton or poplin, for absolutely everything, and it did me no favours whatsoever. It really didn't. One quick bit of advice I will say is that on your pattern they will give advice for which types of fabric to use, and I would stick with that, especially if you're a beginner. So the next one is from Kiwi Kid. I think that's how you say your name or your handle. I love to put washi tape next to the presser foot where I guide along my fabric so the seam is always the same distance apart. It's so much easier than to search for the little lines on the stitch plate. And I love to do interfacing on the fabric first and cutting out after that, so there's no warping during ironing. So yes, some great points there. Let's go through them. The first one is the washi tape tip, and that is something that I've spoken about in my sewing machine video. You see lots of markings here, and that can be really helpful, but sometimes it's really difficult to see. So that's where this comes in handy. This is just some washi tape, Christmas washi tape at that. So what we're going to do is we'll take a strip and we'll tear some off or bite it off. So then we find the marking that we want. So in this case 2. We can sew up against that line. We put our fabric under the presser foot and line it up with this red line. Links to all the videos I mentioned will be down below. In that video I showed how you could put washi tape down, or I think I showed how to use a post-it note, and also you could put elastic around anything with a straight line. You can buy little magnetic things that like attract themselves to the plate because the plate's metal, and then you put your fabric up alongside it. I think as beginners we have a tendency to keep our eye on the needle, and if you keep your eye on the needle, your fabric's going to go all over the place. You really need to be keeping an eye on the edge of the fabric and relating it to where it is on the plate. So the other tip she talked about was batch interfacing. So she would press her interfacing to her fabric first before she cut it out, then put the pattern pieces on the fabric and the interfacing and cut it out. What this is going to do is it's going to stop your fabric stretching out, as she pointed out, when you iron, or when people press. A lot of the time when people press in sewing, they press as if they were ironing their clothes, but that's not what pressing is. When it says to press your fabric, it means to put your iron down, lift it up, put it down again, lift it up, so you're not stretching the fibres out. But when we iron, we go backwards and forwards like this, and that's what can damage the fabric. But yeah, if you do that, then you will have great results, especially on places like collars where it is so important to be accurate. The next tip is from Shannon Lambert. She says, sewing is a skill and skills can be learned through practice. Haven't I been saying that these last few videos? I think when we first start to sew, we expect to be class A seamstresses in no time at all. And I think sometimes we can, when we're sewing a pattern, we come across a new technique, we jump in and do it with the fashion fabric. It fails, our garment looks rubbish, and then we think we can't sew. Or we wear it for once, maybe twice, to show it off on social media, then it goes to the back of the wardrobe and we never wear it again. So I really agree that skills are something that are developed over time. I thought I'd never be able to sew a straight line when I started, and now look, I still can't sew a straight line or speak. I can't even say that. She also said cleaning and rethreading your machine will solve a multitude of problems. So true. I had this very thing happen a couple of months ago. I was using my machine and it started going clunk, 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 and it wouldn't sew through. And the first thing, like, if I didn't know, I would have thought, oh, maybe that was the thread or the needle, but it wasn't. I knew that I needed to clean my machine out. I cleaned it out and it worked like a charm afterwards. Not only does cleaning solve problems when they come up, regularly cleaning, so doing it once a month or so, will prevent problems from occurring as well. So it is really worth doing that. April Harvey Studio says always read instructions before you start to sew. Yes. Now, I'm not great at this, I have to say. Even to this day, I just think, I don't need the instructions. And even with the experience that I have, I still come up with problems when I don't read the instructions. So what I've started doing recently, I say started doing it, I did it with the last pattern and that's when I started it. So we're like at the start of in progress here. What I did is I read through all the instructions and everything you need, all the advice it gives you before I started to sew. And actually that did help give me a clearer idea of what I was doing. But having that idea of where the pattern designer was coming from, what they intended you to do, is really helpful, even if you are not going to follow their instructions. It just gives you a bit of context, a bit of extra information that is surely going to help you in the long run. But if you are enjoying this video and you'd like to see more, do hit that subscribe button, give me a like, because that really helps the algorithm, and my algorithm needs all the help it can get. So let's get on to the next one. Jackie says, invest in a walking foot. It helps massively with sewing knit fabrics or flimsy material. Yes. We need a walking foot in our lives. And thank you for the reminder, because I need to purchase one again. I had one when I bought my snazzy sewing machine. It actually come with a really good one. And I do not know where it went at all. But I totally agree. Use a walking foot. When I first got mine, when I first got my machine, I was using that walking foot all of the time. Whatever I sewed, I just left the walking foot on the machine. Use a walking foot, because what happens is when you use a normal foot, it can drag your fabric. Basically, where you've got your 2 layers of fabric and you've got your presser foot on top, it will drag it through, but it won't drag the bottom one through, so the top layer will come through quicker than the bottom layer and it all shifts. But when you've got a walking foot, it's got feed dogs on the top and on the bottom that will drag the fabric through at an even rate, and that will also solve a multitude of problems. If you have any issues with sewing with knit fabrics, especially if like your fabric is curling or stuff like that, then it's going to be a massive help. You guys are giving such great tips here. I'm really pleased. Thank you if you have submitted a tip. There's lots more, not lots, there's a few more to go through yet, so do stick with me to the end. Live Wow Be Happy says, after making a garment that can take quite a long time, like a shirt or trousers, I detox by making a load of scrunchies for the charity shop. Yes, 1,000 times yes. I haven't been making a great deal lately, as we know, but when I was, if I made a really big project, I just could not sew anything for a week or two. I just needed, as this commenter said, I needed to detox from that really full-on pattern. What I used to detox with was doing a really quick and easy pattern after a difficult one. So maybe if I made trousers or a jacket or something like that, I would then make a knit t-shirt or something like that, or maybe a tank top, just something that's really easy. I would agree, making scrunchies is even better, and I think that is why I was trying to introduce some non-garment sewing onto the channel late last year, where I did some scrunchies and some other things, but it wasn't very well received. So that was what instigated me in starting my second channel, which is a DIY channel where I do lots of different things, not just sewing. And I'm going to be doing home stuff, shopping hauls as well, thrift hauls. So if that interests you, do subscribe to that channel. I'll leave that link down below. So Cherry, hi Cherry. When I don't feel like sewing, I'll sit and cut out the paper pattern pieces of new patterns. I look at Amazon or other online fashions to get ideas for styles, design, fabrics, or other things I can do with patterns I own to create something similar. Sometimes I make a deal with myself to either mend or refashion a garment I own before creating something new. I keep a shiny silver coloured plastic ice bucket from Dollar Tree on my sewing table for sewing trash. So the first one she said is that when she doesn't feel like sewing, she will cut her patterns out. And that is something that I've done in the past. And actually sometimes if I know I've got to cut one pattern out, I might cut 2 or 3 patterns out that I know I've got coming up. I've stopped doing that now because it meant that I had lots of papers hanging around with nowhere to really put them, and it was driving me crazy. So I'm now doing 1 pattern at a time. I got cut off there, but I agree that it is a great idea to just do, if you don't want to sew, there's lots of different aspects to sewing without actually getting the sewing machine out. Cherry's next point was to look at Amazon, look online at fashion websites to get an idea of what you like, what you want to make, be inspired by that. In my video where I took 6 designer makes and matched them with patterns, that's kind of what I was doing in that video. But that can be a lot of fun and it can help you really discover what you're interested in. I don't do this enough, I really don't. Especially up until this last year, I would never ever really think to look online and look at fashion to get an idea of what I want to make. Another thing you can actually do is go into shops and try things on in the shop. Look in the mirror, take a photo of yourself in the mirror. So that'll help you decide if a certain design is for you. Because I've spoke about this before, where pattern designers bring out these gorgeous patterns, but they model them on models that are not our body types, and so we have no real idea if they're going to suit us. So actually, if you go into a shop and find a similar design and try it on, that will give you a clue. She says she makes a deal to amend something or finish something before starting something new. And that can be really good if you're someone who doesn't cope with chaos, doesn't cope with having lots of things going at one time, then that can be really beneficial. The last tip that Sherry shared was to get a bucket, ice bucket from Poundland or Dollar Tree, and use that to put your, like, when you've got bits of thread and scraps in there, and that will keep your area tidy. This is something that I need to do. I do have a little pot, not sure where it is, but it's a little see-through pot that I do pop my threads in, but it's not really big enough. But I did find when I did that, it was very helpful in order to keep my place tidy. Because are you a messy sewer? I'm a really, really messy sewer. I'm messy anything. Like, you know, give me 10 minutes sat in one place and it'll be chaos, no matter if I'm on my own or doing whatever. That was one thing that did help me to stay on top of the tidiness. The other thing was a magnetic pin dish, because after sewing there's pins everywhere and that will pick them up. So just a couple more comments to go. The next one from Jin Wins. Get a solid sewing machine that makes beautiful stitches. I bought 4. Totally agree. Having a good machine is going to help you out. I started off with the IKEA Sigh machine, which I'll put here. It's basically a toy. Then I had a Brother machine, which I'll put a picture here. Not much better, but that cost about £250. Then I upgraded to the Janome DKS 100. I totally fell in love when I saw Tilly and the Buttons with it. Bought it. It was a great machine, much better than my other machines, but the throat space was really small and I got big hands, and I was always grating my hands on like the arch of the sewing machine, and so that was a bit of a deal break. Well, it wasn't a deal breaker, I could have coped with it, but I wanted to upgrade. And then I got my snazzy sewing machine, which is over on the table now, gathering dust at the moment, but I love it. And it sews beautiful stitches. But I will say, if you can't afford a snazzy machine, then buy what you can afford. Just buy the best that you can afford. So if you've got £100 or $100 to spend on the sewing machine, spend the whole of that $100 on it in order to get the best that you can. Some people say that don't spend too much on a machine because at a certain point you just get more stitches. And while that is true, I do think a higher end sewing machine, or even just an improvement on what you previously had, will be beneficial in terms of the sewing experience. I really rate the sewing experience on my sewing machine. And the last comment comes from Maria. Always make a muslin first for complicated and tricky patterns. For years I didn't do this. Once I started, my fitted garments had dramatically improved the fit. I'm so glad this was the final comment, because it is so true. A toile, we all need a toile. If you don't do a toile, please do a toile. You will love it. You will absolutely love it. And that's what the next video is going to be about. If you have a specific question about toiles, leave it down below and I will address it in my next video. If you like this video and you'd like to see perhaps not more like it, because this is a once in a while type video, but if you like the content that is on my channel and you want to see more generally that I do hit that subscribe button, give me a like for the algorithm. And if you got particular benefit from this video, consider purchasing a Ko-fi, because that helps me to earn a living. Until next time, happy sewing. Bye for now.